world, historic house museums related to basically okay, let me just set this up here. It's nominating committees more than anything else. But what I want to do today is talk about why I think nominating committees are really the most important committee that you can have on any nonprofit organization, historic site, whatever it may be. And I'm going to be talking about what we'll have them do throughout the year. I'm suggesting they meet quarterly, but they play a really important role throughout the year in identifying people that are potential board members, vetting them, making sure that they understand what they're getting into before they get nominated by the board, and then have some orientation and training for them once they join. I also have 12 documents for you. Kelly is going to send them out right after this presentation. And they are meant to be things that you can, change as the need suits for your organization, but they do cover a wide variety of situations. There's an application form if you want to join the board. There's a job description for the board members itself, et cetera. So we'll go through each one of them. I'll hold them up so you can see what they look like. And I encourage you all to use those. So we're on our way. So here's the link to, and I have the link again at the very, very end of the document. So if you don't copy it now, this will go to my website where you can download all of them, but you will be sent them at the end of this presentation. So don't worry about them. You'll get them one way or the other, or if worse comes to worse, you can email me at heritageconsultinginc@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to send them to you. So as I mentioned, I really believe that a nominating committee is really the most important committee because it's the only one that looks at the future of the organization in any sort of measured way. And it's one that has the opportunity to perhaps involve former board members on this committee. It's a good way to keep your most recent board president involved with the organization. Perhaps that person should serve on this committee. But it's really the committee that matches the skills that the organization needs next year, the year after, with what the plans are for the organization as it develops and matures. Some of you, when you look at your bylaws, you may note that they say that the nominating committee, what its role is and who should be on the committee, how many people it's required, et cetera. But I've noticed from doing a lot of bylaw review and consulting on that many organizations don't even mention a nominating committee. But if you don't have one, it's easy enough to create. The board would create that as part of a resolution, and they would spell out really what the role is. One of the things I do have for you, and I'll hand it out in a minute, or I'll talk about it in a minute, is a job description for the nominating committee so that you could make it clear what their the circumscribed role that they have. So if you don't have a nominating committee now, I encourage you to create one. And what I have for you is I have a dozen key documents. This is the first one. What does the nominating committee do? And who should serve? What types of people should be on here? And what I'm suggesting is that you could have, depending on the size of your board, 3 to 5 people on the board. Doesn't necessarily all have to be board members. You could have other volunteers, former board members serve on this committee. It's a great way to use their skills and abilities. So the current board president should be the chair of this committee. I'm suggesting most recent past president, current volunteer that's not a board member. This is a great way to see if somebody would be a good board member by involving them with the organization over time in this committee. A representative for a partner organization that you want to cultivate, some group that you want to deepen your relationship with. maybe a former committee people, or those kinds of folks. Now, the executive director would be an ex officio non-voting member, like they are on most, if not all, other committees, so that they can take notes at the meeting, or to help with the organization. So on this handout, I also have a very brief couple paragraph job description for the committee, with the notion that they are responsible as basically the talent search. The board as a whole is the one that is going to make an offer to nominate somebody, but the nominating committee is looking for prospects, looking for talent, looking for people that you want to involve with the organization over time. So the kinds of activities that the nominating committee members would do was, I'm suggesting that it be a quarterly meeting, but that they have activities to do in between those meetings. What I would suggest, the first thing that the nominating committee do is review with the executive committee really what the forward trajectory of the organization is, and to understand if there is a strategic plan or any project that is upcoming, so that they understand the talents and skills that you're going to need for new board members in doing this solicitation. The nominating committee is also going to provide a board application form. I've got a sample for you. And then also a board member contract, and we'll talk about that as well. And they'll be collecting applications from candidates, and then making sure that you've got all the information that you need, and doing some vetting of the candidate. We'll talk a little bit more about the type of information that you want to have. And then the nominating committee is creating a list of the qualified candidates for the board. So the tasks really are important, but they're really, as I said, the talent search. This committee, the nominating committee, is not making any promises to anybody that they're going to become board members. They're gathering names for the board. And so they have to be very circumspect and very clear that they're not making offers to people to be on the board. What this committee is saying is that they're telling candidates they're going to be put on the waiting list. And board opportunities come throughout the year, not just at the annual meeting. A board member moves out of town, a board member is ill, a board member decides to resign. There's a whole variety of reasons why there's turnover in a board throughout the year. So having a list of people that are interested, that have had somebody discuss what the needs and aspirations are for the organization with them, is only good. So that if it's 3 months or 6 months before the annual meeting, and somebody's spouse gets transferred and they're moving out of town, they no longer could serve on your board, then you've got at least a prospect there that's waiting and is ready to be nominated. So again, I just want to be very clear here. The nominating committee is the talent scouts, but it's the job of the board to make an offer for who should be on the board through the actual nomination process as a board process. So I want to talk about what the board does. We know what the nominating committee does is the talent search. And then once the nominating committee gives the board a list of qualified candidates, they're going to review the names. And they may decide to interview some of the final candidates, or have a board member go chat with them, so that they understand really what that potential new board member brings to the organization. The board is going to create a slate of people that they plan to nominate for the annual meeting. And then the slate is elected by the board, or the slate is elected by the membership, depending on the type of organization that you have. So once the number of folks that you have openings for, vacancies on your board, you have a slate that matches that number, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, whatever it may be. At your annual meeting, you will nominate those people to serve, and then they will be elected. The board president should welcome them, certainly invite them to be at the board meeting where they're elected. And then the board will, or the staff, if you have staff, provide some kind of orientation. We'll talk a little bit more about that. That's really basically 45 minutes, coming to your historic site, doing a tour, meeting other staff members if you have them, talking more about really what the organization does. It's really meant to be like 45 minutes. Get to know people, meet the board president, meet the staff, meet the other board members that might be there. And then afterwards, have a formal board training. And I have an outline for that as well for you. And then the staff will continue to help the new board member get oriented to the organization. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit about establishing a board buddy for that person so that they're not overwhelmed sitting in the first board meeting. So these are the tasks that the board itself does after they've gotten the list of folks that are that the nominating committee are suggesting to the board be nominated to the organization. All right, so how do we go about finding these people and vetting them? So the first thing I'm suggesting is that the board, the nominating committee, work with the executive committee to understand really what skills and abilities do you need for new board members. Sometimes if you've got a capital project that's coming up, maybe you were fortunate and you got a grant from the New Jersey Historic Trust, and maybe that's become obvious that you need somebody on your board that's got some construction experience, architectural experience, what have you, so that you can be a good client when you're hiring people to do hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of work to the, at the historic site. So maybe you put on this list the skills you need. Maybe it's, somebody that's got construction background. Maybe also the organization is looking at a collections management project. Maybe you want to do some organizing around your collections and to store them appropriately. Maybe we need to have somebody with that kind of background, maybe another curator or consultant curator that could help us with that kind of skills. So you're going to look at this list. These are just suggestions here, but really get down to understanding really who you need to have on your board, and let's go and see if we can do some networking amongst our volunteers that are currently involved with the organization that maybe have the skills that we need. And then you're going to identify person A, person B, person C, and what sort of roles do they fit. This will bring out for you, men, women, ages, diversity issues, around several candidates, so you can see who fits now and what you need in the future. So it's a very simple form, and I hope that you would think to use it. So the board will, the nominating committee, will create an application form. Again, it's not meant to be scary or what have you, but it's to be circulated to get consistent information from everybody that you're soliciting. And what you want to do is you want to get that information. It can be filled out by hand. I mean, it's not anything special, but you need a date when you need it back, ideally to the person that's soliciting them. It may not be everybody has a relationship with a prospective candidate, but certainly you should, the person that's making the approach about whether they would be interested in serving on the board should be getting the application back. And I have, I'll show you in a couple of minutes a form that I developed and types of questions I would want to ask. So the types of questions that you really want to be asking these people are about their their interest in your historic site. Have they been, what kind of, I mean, are they interested in local history? Do they have specific skills? Do they have any fundraising skills? Oh boy, a topic that we all need all the time. But we need to know if people are comfortable soliciting others to make a gift to the organization. So here's a sample of the board member application form, and I have questions on here like, why are you interested in committing your time and energy to our historic site? What do you think are the characteristics of a great board member? This is helpful if somebody has served on a board before, so that you can understand that. And then fundraising is a significant obligation of board service. Please see our board commitment form, which we'll talk about next. And can you tell us about your experience in fundraising? Please be specific. Some people will say they have no experience, which is okay, but we want to know if somebody has been involved with like their church capital campaign or the hospital fundraising campaign or what have you. So it's just not fundraising around your particular interest in local history. It is really fundraising of any sort. And then if board members bring experience, wisdom, strategic thinking, and personal contacts, thinking about your personal contact list, and if you might use it to help solicit members for the museum. So you can choose to include these questions or not, but I think that having some of these questions will help you understand the seriousness of the potential person that is that you're looking at to be a board member for your historic site. So I have a board member contract included in here, and I really am a firm believer that anybody that joins a board should understand what the obligations are. I mean, and it goes from the sublime to the ridiculous. As an example, how many board meetings do your bylaws require that you attend every year? Usually there's some reference to it in the bylaws, so that would be on your board contract. You should also be writing down when exactly these meetings are. First Thursday of the month at 4 or whatever it is. So people understand that, this is the time we have to set aside, for the organization. And then many organizations I work with expect that a board member will attend the monthly board meetings as well as participate in at least one other committee. If that's a requirement, then that should be listed on this board member contract. And then if you require or expect board members to make a financial contribution to the organization, however small it may be, just that they have to be a member, even at the lowest level, but that's expected because you want 100% participation by all board members in the organization's fundraising, then you need to put that in here. Some organizations I've been involved with have a specific dollar amount that they're expecting board members to either write a check for or give. The term is give or get, either through finding other potential people to become contributors to the organization, or find sponsors, or find other contributions to the organization. But if those are requirements for your board, we need to set that out, and we need to have that in this 1 page or so board contract. And it's also the obligation that the board member needs to be up to date with what's going on. They need to read the emails. They need to get the information from the staff, if you have one, about what's really happening with the organization in between board meetings. So I really am a firm believer in a board member contract. I have a sample for you as part of this presentation, and I hope that you would consider having that. I also have a 1-page sample board member job description talking about really what the board members' responsibilities are. It's like, well, here's one paragraph. Board members will read all the minutes, financial statements, work plans, strategic plans, budget, IRS 990 forms, and any other official document, and then ask questions in capital letters. That's the most important thing a board member can do. Rather than just sitting there asking questions is really one of the most vital responsibilities, particularly if they're new and they don't really understand. A lot of times we use a lot of jargon at a board meeting. We use initials for things, or we use acronyms or what have you. And that's really hard for a new board member to understand. And that's part of the reason why it's really important for them to ask questions. And so we'll discuss in a minute why you might want to consider pairing them up with somebody who's been on the board a while, so they can give them sort of the inside baseball discussion about, well, this is the reason why everybody keeps talking about these funds. CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Funds. We get some of those from our local government, so that they're not just sitting there, not knowing what you're all talking about. So the sample board member job description is a help to sort of lay it all out, what you're expecting the board member to do besides what's in the board member contract. I also really firmly believe that you need to share documents with potential board members before they're nominated. They need to see your bylaws and the board member contract so they know what they're signing up for. You also need to share key financial documents, the most recent financial statement, your IRS 990 form, your tax return, and then your budget. Now, I know that a lot of people may feel very uncomfortable about this, but I really believe that forewarned is forearmed. If your organization is running a deficit, that new board member needs to know that before they actually or permit their name to be added to the slate. It's not that you want to dress this up. It's more you want to be factual about the financial needs of the organization and really where it's going. So you need to share this basic information with them. If you do have a work plan where you are identifying what kinds of activities that you're doing each year, or an annual report, mostly staffed organizations would do an annual report, but they don't have to be particularly long, but they would identify, it's basically a brag book for want of a better term. It's an opportunity for the organization to talk about all the great things that the organization has done for the year, and to thank volunteers and board members for their participation, and especially to identify everybody that has been a contributor to the organization. So an annual report, I think, is a helpful thing to have. Many organizations will put off a strategic plan until they're staffed. I see the benefit to that, but I think there's also another side to it where it would certainly, if you're considering large projects or funding from state agencies, certainly having a strategic plan, even if it's very simple, 3 or 4 pages, to identify really where the organization is going, could be very, very helpful in convincing a funder that you're serious, and that the money that they would give you in a grant would be well used. So I really think that when you're talking with a potential board member, and the more questions that they're asking, and even if they're big picture questions, like why are we still do this, or why are we not affiliated with XYZ organization, or what have you. The big questions, I think, can be answered, and if you don't know the answer as a board member, then be honest and say, I'll get back to you about that. But that's really part of learning about the organization, and taking the potential nomination seriously. So the last thing that the nominating committee does is, after you've gathered applications, completed applications from everybody that you think is a potential good board member, you're going to tell everybody that they're on the waiting list, and then their job is done for the moment. They'll prepare, put all their materials together, and submit that to the board as, you know, at a board meeting, hopefully, you know, a month or two before your annual meeting, so that the board can review these people that the nominating committee thinks might be really quality candidates. Okay, so really, the other thing I would really recommend is that the nominating committee has to be doing their work with some confidentiality, meaning that we don't really need to know, or that the community as a whole doesn't need to know that so-and-so is being considered for the board. The only person that gets considered for the board are people that the board has decided. So we don't really, we want to be honest with potential board members, and we don't want to minimize the duties involved or the time that's needed to actually do a good job. Certainly, you know, the monthly board meetings and maybe an executive, maybe a committee meeting, that may end up being a total of, you know, 5 to 10 hours a month. Be clear that that's really what you're expecting. And then the committee also may end up soliciting more people than you have spots to fill. And that's where you have a good bench, let's just say, where there's a potential opportunity for a board member that leaves out of town, that moves out of town. We've got a person that can fill that spot sooner rather than later. You know, everybody that comes on the board that is not elected at the annual meeting usually comes on for a partial term. They're filling the spot of somebody that had left, might be for a year or two. But these partial terms, you know, 2-year terms, 1-year terms, are a great opportunity to try out somebody for the board. And certainly that is something that the board will consider, because they may be offering partial terms to somebody to fill in for a board member that has resigned. So they really are a great opportunity to check somebody out before you commit to a longer 3-year term. So the nominating committee is making recommendations to the board, and the board's going to review the list. They may decide that maybe they know they're going to have 3 vacancies and you submitted 4. I would suggest that the nominating committee put them in order of preference, so that the board understands that, you know, these are the people that we think are great. And then they will make all the decisions about who will be nominated. But it may be that not everybody that the nominating committee has chatted up really end up ever getting nominated to be on the slate for the election at the annual meeting. So that's the reason why telling people that the nominating committee has viewed and vetted that they're on the waiting list is so important, because it may be that they may not be nominated for this cycle. It may be for next year. So the board would create a slate, and then they'd submit the slate for vote, whether it's to the membership of your organization or to the board itself. And then the new board members would be welcomed via letter. Again, they'll see the copy of the board contract, which we're asking them now to sign, now that they have been elected to the board, and then set a date for them to have some orientation. So after the nomination, they'll be sent a list of all the board meeting dates. I would hope that most of you would have a regular meeting date, you know, the 4th Thursday of the month, whatever it may be. And so that you'd ask the new board members to put all those dates in their calendar. That's one of the things to discuss during the vetting process, is that, you know, if the board is meeting, you know, the 3rd Thursday at 7 p.m. and somebody is an elected official or is a teacher, you know, in a graduate school, and all their classes are at night and they're only on Thursday, then you need to really think about whether that person is a good fit or not, because they can't come to the meeting. It doesn't make any sense to nominate somebody if they can't show up. to the board meetings, or know in advance they're going to miss a third of the meetings. That's really not helpful for the organization as a whole. I'm also suggesting that you send a press release out announcing the election of these new board members with a brief paragraph about these folks. Make sure that you pass it by them beforehand so you get all the names and dates correct. It'd be even nicer if the press release had photos, headshots of all these folks. It'd be nice if those headshots could go on your website as well. And then to send also the dates for orientation. I really encourage you to do that within the month of the annual meeting. Again, it could be 45 minutes, late in the afternoon, early evening. Come to the historic site, meet with the board president, meet with the staff, meet with the executive director, etc. Now, one of the things I've seen done that I've been a recipient of this, and that's the reason why I think it works, is that for a new board member to identify somebody who's been on the board for a while to be their buddy. It would be nice to mesh personality types so that you've got somebody that you think that they would be friendly with or get along with. But really the job of the buddy, and I think you need to make this clear, is so that this new board member understands all the acronyms, all the background stories about the organization, because there are going to be tons, we know. And so they need to have information about the organization, so that they just not looking like a deer in front of a headlight, at the first or second or third board meeting. We need to sort of make that transition easier for them. If you've got somebody whispering in their ear saying, "Oh yes, we keep mentioning Mrs. Stone. She was the founder of the organization," that kind of information. Where are they going to get that information otherwise? So if you don't already do this, to create a board binder, although today I would just make it a Google file of all this information about the organization, the basic information that every board member is going to need, the corporation papers, the bylaws, the board list with everybody's contact information, minutes from the last, I'm suggesting 6 board meetings, so that the board member could, find out what have been particular topics that have come up, things that have been struggle for the organization. They'll see that in the minutes, and as well as the executive committee. I hope that all of you have the executive, if you do use an executive committee, that there are minutes for those meetings as well, since they have great authority for the organization's activities between board meetings. You might also want to have a copy of the officers and directors insurance policy, or at least the name of the insurance broker that handles that for the organization. I hope that most of you have officers and directors insurance. You may also want to have your newsletters, an audit. Most of us, unless you're a very large organization, you're not going to have an audit. But if you do, have a copy of that in the Google file for the board member. The collections and deaccessioning plans would be important to have, so that they could understand what the thinking is around those issues for your historic house. The disaster preparedness plan, any kind of membership brochures, particularly if you're expecting board members to make a gift, and then if there is a strategic plan. So, these are things that the staff, if you have them, should be able to pull together. They're sort of evergreen documents that you would probably keep on your desktop just to have them, but make sure that the link is sent to board members so they have access to this information. So the board orientation I'm suggesting here should happen, again, we talked about it being 45 minutes. You can either have the executive director do it, or it could be a nice thing for the nominating committee to do. since they have been so involved with helping identify these folks that have just come on the board. You'd you're not going to spend a lot of time, but you're going to acknowledge these are the types of things in the board binder, and these are the things that, you know, I would read. Have them read the bylaws. So everybody should read the bylaws once a year, just to say that you did it. But certainly for new board members, that's really essential, because it's your playbook. You're meeting the rest of the staff, and this would be an opportunity to assign a board buddy, so that they could get acquainted and be ready to go to the next board meeting together. The other thing I have for you is an outline for formal board training. I really think that board training is a critical activity for any nonprofit board, because it explains really what the legal responsibilities are of nonprofit organizations under the state nonprofit law. And the outline I have for you talks really about really the importance of board service in the nonprofit sector, and talks about really the duties of duty of care, duty of loyalty, and obedience to the law. I have other information here for you about that, or you can look up the state nonprofit law, New Jersey not-for-profit law. If you want a copy of that, contact me. I can send that to you. But the most important thing is that historic sites are working boards and governing boards. They have two functions. They actually do work. They may, you may have people that garden, at your historic site. You may have other people that help with fundraising. You may have others that deal with that want to work with the collections, so that everybody really has something to do besides being a board member, to contribute to running events and that what have you. So that the working and governing aspect of being a board member are crucial, and that's part of the reason why you have gone around and selected the folks that you have that serve on your board. So you can see this outline. I'm happy to take any questions about that from you either now or after this presentation. So the board source, it's a national organization that encourages nonprofit board service, is an organization that I admire a great deal, and they have a couple of documents that I have included in your packet about board service, and really what it means to be a board member in a nonprofit organization. And here again, you've got this information about duty of care, loyalty, and obedience to the law. And they also have a document, which I've also included in the handouts for you, about 10 typical historic site board responsibilities. And certainly the most important thing is establishing the mission and the vision of the organization. Maybe you did that when the organization was first formed. But if you haven't looked at your mission statement in the last 2 or 3 years, maybe it's time to look at it again and say, and to determine if it really does still meet what you're actually doing as an organization. If you have staff, the board as a whole chooses the executive director. The board also establishes the budget and works with, if you work with an accountant or with a bookkeeper, helping them establish financial control, so that there's good and high quality understanding about the money, who manages it, how it's deposited, and how we make sure that there isn't any malfeasance for the organization. The board, although it's number 4 here, raises and manages the money. Certainly we delegate a lot of those responsibilities to committees that are doing events, or to the staff for writing grants. But the board as a whole is responsible for having a well-funded organization. The organization also, the board, has to understand all the legal duties of the not-for-profit corporation. In New Jersey, we have to file annually the State Charities Division, and make sure that we pay any fees that are required. The board as a whole plans for the future and evaluates the present. Now, a lot of times that's really done just through the budget process. But if you do a strategic plan or you do any kind of work plan annually to identify what tasks what particular projects we're going to work on this year, that's part of this planning for the future and evaluating the present. The board as a whole, through the nominating committee, is recommending names of new board members. And you're walking, talking advocates every day for the museum. And certainly people know that you're on the board, and they come up to you in the grocery store, you know, like what's happening, or they read an article about an event that you did. How did that go? So really, you're an ambassador, whether you know it or not. And you're monitoring and growing the organization's programs. Certainly, if you're looking at large capital projects coming in the future, sometimes the time horizon for those might be 5 years, so, or longer even. So that's part of the growing the organization's program. And finally, supporting the executive director and evaluating them regularly. You know, there's nothing worse than somebody who takes the job as an executive director and doesn't feel supported by their own board members. That you know, it's from the sublime to the ridiculous, where it could be, you know, a small bonus or a thank you, or you know, an article in the newspaper about, you know, their anniversary, that they've been involved with the organization for 5 years. But the executive director really needs to feel appreciated in their role, so that they stay on the job, because the turnover it wastes time. It could be expensive, and particularly if the person is leaving because they don't feel supported, that's really a tragedy that the board can prevent by making sure that they're supporting their executive director. Onboarding is an activity that I really focus on primarily through the board buddy process. They are, you know, a new person on the board is going to take a few months, or you know, 3-4 months for them to really understand who everybody is. Maybe they don't meet everybody at the first meeting, you know, because people are absent, whatever. But they need to understand really what role everybody plays, and that they need to become part of the team. And so onboarding is an important role that certainly the executive director would play, by making sure that the board member feels that they've got the information they need, you know, to be able to make decisions on behalf of the organization. So I had said that I thought that the nominating committee was a year-round job, but I only have them meeting quarterly. But really, they're playing a whole host of jobs here, where they're identifying. They're identifying potential. I'll go back here. They're identifying potential people to serve on the board. They're collecting application. They're vetting the application, and then they're sending it to the board. And the board is responsible for picking who they want to be on the slate that gets submitted at the annual meeting, either to the membership or to the board for a vote. Then there's some orientation, board training, and onboarding. So it's a cycle that goes throughout the year. And you're always going to be looking for talented people. They may not necessarily find them, you know, 2 weeks before the annual meeting. Maybe really you're really looking for a particular type of skill, like a contractor, or somebody with some very specialized collections management skill. And that may be a matter of doing some networking throughout the year to try to find an appropriate person to serve on your board. So I'm going to wrap this up now and talk about what we talk about. We had 12 sample documents, not 11. So I hope that you will all take a look at those. and use them, change them for change them as the need for your organization. And then hope that you'll stick around and ask some questions. So I'm here's again the handout. This is on my website. And you can these are all PDF documents. You can download them there's a PDF of the presentation itself, and also the 12 documents. So I hope that you'll use those. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Donna. Yeah, so anyone who's on our call, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can use the chat feature and I'll read them out loud. But Donna, one of the, I guess, questions that I have to kind of kick us off,
Sure.
could you maybe briefly, and I'm sure it could be a whole presentation in of itself, go through maybe an example of some challenges in selecting board members or like recruiting board members?
Sure. I think that the biggest issue is that people just are afraid to ask. They're afraid of rejection. Like what happens if they say no? Well, you just thank them for talking with you. It's not embarrassing. It's just it's like sadly dating. You have to you got to solicit a lot of people, and being a board member of a historic site does have some pretty serious responsibilities, because you're responsible for the building as well as the collection in most cases. So and there are hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of assets that the organization is responsible for, the building being the biggest asset. So few historic sites sadly have endowments, but that would be a wonderful thing to have. So I guess fear of rejection, but I think that being able to talk to half a dozen people, knowing that you need 3 would be at least a good start.
Okay, we have a question from Tom who writes, do you find it necessary, helpful to have people first prove themselves by volunteering for the organization before being nominated?
Yes, I agree. I really, my preferred method is that somebody do something with the organization first, then to become a board member. Because the last thing you want to be doing is asking somebody to be on the board that's like never been to an event, never been to the building. Like, what's the point of that? Really. So, I think a year would be fine. Or if they chaired a particular event or were, critical for the success of XYZ activity, that would be enough to show that they were an eager beaver and, would have something to offer to the organization. So, that would be, yes, I completely agree. I would rather them be affiliated with the organization in some way. And it would also be great if they were a member, even for $20 or whatever the lowest membership rate is of your organization. Again, that shows another level of commitment to the organization.
That was an excellent question. And now I'm going to throw an added bonus question, the same topic, just expanding this a bit. Now, what if, right, you have whether it's a historic site or a historic society or an organization, where like it's sort of timing, like you're in desperate need of volunteers or people to, be on the board and contribute. So in a situation like that, then how would you navigate having people prove themselves, or right, like their interest, so to speak, if that makes sense?
Okay, so are you talking about something like the number of board members has gone down below what you need for a quorum?
Let's say that. Okay, that would be an excellent example.
That's really bad.
That's really bad, but there are
really bad.
right?
But you really can't do business. I mean, that's you have to really take a step back and say, okay, what's the reason why we've lost these board members? I mean, did they all like move out of town? you know, or that is, or they're that disaffected or what have you. But, you know, once you get below your minimum for a quorum, you really can't do business, you know. So, you know, in order to conduct business, like sign your IRS 990 form, you know, you need to have a, you know, active and functioning board. So, you know, that's not the most ideal opportunity or moment to join a board when there's, we need you for a quorum. But, you know, if that's what you have to do, then the board needs a plan where they're gonna find other new board members, you know, within the next 2 months.
Yes, it can become become challenging. Do we have any other questions from our guests here today? I think everyone's quite shy. Although, Donna, you gave a fully thorough presentation, and we all are looking forward to our handouts. Oh, Tom says thank you. So yes, we do. Thank you. If there is no further questions, Donna, do you have any other closeout comments you want to share before we conclude our program for today?
Sure. I've done this presentation probably 25 times in the last, I don't know, 10 years. In one guise or another, for whether it be a downtown revitalization organization, a statewide preservation organization, historic sites or whatever. And it's one that I think has great import for the future of any nonprofit organization, because without a nominating committee, or without, you know, you know, high quality people that are coming into the organization that have, you know, been a volunteer, or had been, you know, a tour guide or anything, you know, affiliated with the organization in the past, you know, without knowing that you've got a fresh blood coming in to the organization, you know, really the whole future of the organization is suspect to me, you know, because the most boards now, you know, are not perpetual. They have a certain number of certain number of terms that you're permitted to serve on the board. Usually it's 2. And then maybe you have to sit off for a year before you can be reelected. So that's really that really creates a need for a nominating committee to have people that are ready to join the board and that know what they're getting into. You know, I mean, I've had a lot of people say, why we want to share our financial statement. I said, they're going to find out if they get nominated, you know, they're going to, they got to be aware of what the tax return says at the very minimum, and participate in the budget process. So why wouldn't you want to share that information with them before they get nominated, so that they're, you know, fully aware of what the organization's desires are.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much, Donna, for bringing all this information to us. Again, just thank you for everyone participating and tuning in on a Sunday afternoon. We will send this link out to the full presentation and the handouts, and that's it. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and hopefully you'll tune in next time for another PNJ's Q&A.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.